Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I really enjoyed this start of this meeting where it's really buzzing in the room, everybody talking. Because I think when we started out for only 6 years ago now, it was not the same amount of feeling that we are a battery ecosystem. In fact, only 6 years ago, this Battery Alliance, I'm quite sure that many of you have heard about it before, but just a short recap, was launched by the European Commission, by the now Executive Vice President Maros Šefčovič, with one objective, and that is to secure the automotive industry in Europe. By that time, there were many people questioning why we should go into this direction, but it is 7% of our GDP. 13 to 14 million direct and indirect jobs depend on it. More than 17,000 companies working within the automotive industry, supporting, constructing, building machinery, equipment, parts, cars for our customers in Europe and our wealth. 30% of Europe's entire R&D budget coming from the automotive industry sector. So by that time, we did something that was quite unique. We developed an action plan together with the industry, together with academic researchers, together with decision makers, that we handed over to the European Commission on how Europe could become a winner in this transition to electrification. The Commission adopted this as a strategic action plan on batteries that was published in 2018, and I think we can look back on quite a number of successes. There are 2 battery IPCIs that are currently ongoing. There is a battery regulation that has been adopted. I will touch upon more others proposals for a regulatory supportive framework from the EU. And the industry has really been growing because only 5, 6, 7 years ago, when you look at the picture on the left-hand side, the global capacity corresponded to what today is 1 gigafactory, not even 30 gigawatt hours capacity in 2016, and that was globally, with a forecast to more or less 200 for 2020. So I think globally it really has shown that electrification is on the way. But when you're looking at the supply chain in Europe, when we started, we had not a lot of raw material production. We don't have a lot of battery material production, and on cell production capacity, it was 0% by that time. But what we saw was a tremendous pickup of EVs from the customer side, especially around 2020. There was the most aggressive forecast predicting a very rapid pickup of EVs, something that we by that time called the hockey stick. Very few people believed us when we went and talked to the Commission about this, and what happened? The adoption happened twice as fast when you're looking at the mobile, at the transport sectors. And also for the stationary storage, which very few people talked about by then, it was actually 4 times the predictions of 2017. So the market demand is really growing in Europe, and as you can see, there are a lot of announcements, especially on the cell production capacity side. Some people look at it and say, well, we even have an overcapacity. But looking at the slide, there's about 30 gigafactories on the slide. Very few are in production, that are the dark blues. Very few of them are so-called Tier 1 producers as well, meaning that many of those projects that you see up here are nothing more than PowerPoint projects at this stage. They still lack funding, they still lack knowledge, they lack experts that can produce those batteries. So I'm quite certain that not all of those 30 gigafactories we will see will also become there and be able to produce what they actually announced back in 2030. And to put another more like bitter drop in the drink, last year on 16th August, the US Inflation Reduction Act was published. And this really shook the European battery ecosystem to its foundation, I would say. Many people, including the Commission, came to us asking, what are really the effects of it? Do we see any effects? And I think now, 1 year after its publication, or more or less even 1.5, I think we are quite certain that we do. There are now numbers looking at how many investments have actually flown in the US thanks to the IRA. It has now surpassed $1 billion, whereas in Europe we see that the announced capacities for cell production, in fact, have been dropping, especially in the short run, meaning that their investments going westwards, announced capacities are slowing down. So in order to keep up our promises for 2030, I think we still have a lot to do. Just because on the electricity prices, this is something that sometimes is overseen as well when it comes to the US Inflation Reduction Act. It is not only supporting EVs and battery production, even if the lion's share of all the support is going there, but also renewable energy production, which in the long time, there are some reports showing that the electricity cost, the levelized cost of electricity for renewable energies will also drop significantly, giving the US another competitive advantage. You don't need to. I hope you don't drop it because out of shock. But looking at the comparison on the effects, there are calculations showing that the US production costs for a battery pack, if you even it out, are more or less on par with China, whereas the European Union, I would say, is at a more disadvantaged situation, even worse because of the rising electricity costs. So this is a warning sign that we really need to do something. And on top of that, there are also other concerns, like the raw material supply chains, where China already pointed out that, well, wait a moment here, we are ruling the graphite world, for example, and if we want, we can actually cut the supply. They haven't done it yet, but at least they put it out as a warning sign. And on top of that, we also see China's inflow on the EV segment. EV adoption in Europe is picking up. It's picking up quite promising as well, but it sometimes gives a level of false security that we are saying Europe is a strong automotive continent, and especially with Germany as a driving engine. When you're looking at the EV, it's a disruptive technology. 51% of the global share for EVs are new entrants. It's not the incumbent ones. And many of them are in China, already now pushing out, especially in the EV sector, the incumbent ones, and that is the European players that generally had Chinese as a good traditional market where they made profit. There are forecasts showing that from the non-Chinese market shares will actually drop from 52% today down to only 14% in the coming years. And the rest will be dominated by Chinese automotive companies. Also, when it comes to innovation, I think we all know Vorsprung durch Technik. That is a very well-known expression. But today, in this transition to EVs, it is not longer the European advantage. It's the advantage of the Chinese producing EVs in mass at affordable prices and making profit on it in all segments. And this is something that we still need to learn in Europe. The European Union has responded with a couple of proposals that you can see here under the Green Deal Industrial Plan. We have the Temporary Transition and Crisis Framework, the TCTF. We have the Net Zero Industry Act, and then the Critical Raw Materials Act that was in a speedy process adopted or agreed on, I could say. It is not adopted, but will most probably adopted by the end of the year. That's looking on how to stimulate domestic production in the battery material supply chain, but also looking on how to secure it from outside of Europe. Nevertheless, when we're looking at the battery value chain in total, I think despite all the efforts the European Commission is setting up, there are still a couple of very significant gaps that we need to fill, especially when it comes to supplying the raw material, where we see a very great disconnect between the demand and supply. We are still too dependent on raw material import from outside of Europe. But also when it comes to our cell production capacity that looked so promising, but still we need to do more to scale up, to get the experts to bring down energy and production costs for this segment. On the EV adoption, Europe, considered the continent with most innovative force, in fact has lost in 2022, where China now is considered to being the most innovative region for innovations in the automotive sectors. How do we bring this back? And finally, also in recycling, a sector that is growing, but still threatened by a number of topics like the leakage of material to outside Europe. And I think the Commission is looking on trying to do and support something like that. And it is dearly time to update our strategic action plan that was developed in 2017. The European Court of Auditors also had it in their report when they looked at it. It's a good development, and there was a good momentum of really trying this mindset from how can we become a winner in this industry to actually start developing. And we're seeing so many good initiatives in Europe that are actually on the starting line, but now we have to pick them up under the arms and help them through the finish line. And I think this slide summarizes it quite well. We have the US, we have China and the other Asian companies, and Europe a little bit squeezed in the middle. Good news, we have a strong market. Many people want to come here, cooperate with us. How do we do this in the best possible way to get this technology transfer? There are a lot of positive things going on in Europe. I saw this in the discussions already, and I hope to explore more of it in the panel. And thank you.